Shalom. Today is Friday after the holiday of Sukkot, which will always be the Shabbat, where we read the first chapter of the Torah, beginning with the word Bereishit, which means in the beginning. Each year, the Jewish people have weekly Torah readings, and it's organized that it should be completed, all the 5 books of Moses, by the holiday of Sukkot and Shemini Atzeres, and then to begin a new year starting with the first chapter. We say when we lift up the Torah in the Beit Knesset, before we read the Torah, we say this is the Torah that Moses gave to the Jewish people. And then there are some people who have a minute to sing, Moses is truth and his Torah is truth. Moses received the Torah at Mount Sinai, and at that time there was given by Moses the first set of the 10 Commandments. It's a very, very important number, the number 10. There are 10 statements in the beginning of the Torah in which the world was created. The number 10 again. And there are the 10 Commandments that were given at Mount Sinai. The number 10. The first passage of the Torah, Bereishit, Bara Elohim, Es HaShemayim V'es Haaretz, has in it 28 letters. Learning the Torah in the Hebrew language, you get the essence of the Torah. Just learning from the translation is lacking. The essence of the knowledge of the Torah is through learning in the language of the Torah, which is called the Holy Language. And the letters of the Torah have in them special meaning. They also have a numerical value. Now, the first passage of the Torah has in it 28 letters. 28 in Hebrew is the word for koach, or strength, or power. But 28 connects to man. That man has his hands 28 joints. It comes down into the creation. The hand of man, four above, 4 below. That's 8, that's 16, the thumb. There are 28 joints in the Torah, in the hands. That corresponds to the 28 letters of the Torah. Now, in the first passage of the Torah, Bereishit, God's hands, he created the world. Man is created in the image of God. Now, their hands, we have 5 fingers, and 5 fingers, we have 10 fingers. And God created the world with 10 statements. The statements that are in the Torah, until the last of the statements is the Sabbath. So, man is created in the image of God. There's 7 days of creation, and look at your face, my face, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, and my mouth. It comes to 7. So there is 7 lights which light up the universe, which is the 7 days of creation. Also of the body, if you look, 2 arms, the two arms, the body itself, 2 legs, the sexual organs, that's 6, and then there you have a choice. The head, that if you want to find God and to know God, or look down to the earth, that's the 7th. That's Chava, the mother of all living creatures. People have a choice whether which is the 7th, which 7 is the Shalemut, or the completion of the man. His completion is through 7 above, which is the 7th is here, the crown, the supernal crown of God. That is where the knowledge of God completes the man. Or the sexual organ is the 6th, and then comes the mother Rachel, the womb of Rachel, and to be fruitful and multiply. That is the second completion of a person. Spiritual completion, that is to know God, the 7th. The physical completion through uniting with your soulmate and making a family, having children, be fruitful and multiply. That the woman is the 7th. Each person has a chance to complete himself in this life, or maybe he will not complete himself in this life, and then he will come back and complete himself in his next reincarnation. Jewish people do not suppress or reject that mitzvah, the first commandment of the Torah, which is to be fruitful and multiply. And then they have to go out and to get married and make a family. I have many friends that have even up to 20 children from one woman. My wife, she had 7, and it was difficult for us. It was difficult for her. We had a divorce. To be fruitful and multiply for the Jewish people is an obligation. But in the Gemara it says that it's an obligation to the Jewish people. Why does it say there in the Gemara to the Jewish people? And my teacher at that time said it's possible that those non-Jews, they're not obligated like Jews to be fruitful and multiply. They can be able to complete themselves through the knowledge of God. They go into a monastery or an ashram, and that's where they spend their lives. But the Jews have a special connection, a lineage, which we have to work to continue. Even today, when the world there are 9 billion people in the world, 7 billion, and there's 6 million Jews living in Israel, and 13 million Jews in the whole world, or 11 million Jews in the whole world. Doesn't matter. We still have that obligation to sanctify the seed of the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to make a family. But there are 2 purposes to creation. Therefore, the Torah begins with the letter Beit. The second letter of the Torah is the letter Beit. Why does it start with the letter Beit? Here is the letter Aleph. The letter Aleph, that's the first letter. Aleph is the first letter. Over here, Aleph is the first letter. And Beit is the second letter. Each letter has a number. Aleph is the number 1, and Beit is the number 2. But the Torah begins with the letter Beit, because there are 2 purposes, 2 ways to complete the man that God created. And he put him in the Garden of Eden. That is, the Aleph is the knowledge of God, the universal faith. The Aleph is a combination, is a unity, a divine unity. It has in it a point above and a point below and a line in the middle. It's the universal faith. And Adam was placed in the Garden of Eden, and he was connected to the universal faith. But the Torah begins with Beit, because there is another purpose of creation, a second purpose. That is to be fruitful and to populate the earth and to build for God a kingship on earth, a dwelling place. Now, to build a dwelling place on earth, God had to give instructions to mankind how to build his dwelling place on earth. And these instructions began at Mount Sinai through Moses, that he gave the law to the Jewish people. And this law was then taken by the family of Asaph, Christian religion, and it was taken by the family of Islam. But the Jewish people are the representatives of the most authentic scripture that is in this world, which is the 5 books of Moses. And within the 5 books of Moses is the religion of the Jewish people. It's not the religion of the Jewish people is for the Jewish nation, and it separates the Jewish nation from the other nations of the world. So the letter base, the Torah begins with the letter base, which is 2, that there are 2 purposes to creation. One is to be fruitful and multiply, to make a dwelling place on the earth for God, through righteousness and justice, establishment of justice in the world, the justice which we see the world has changed a lot, and there is justice in the world that there was never before. The justice of the secular world today is in competition with the justice that was in Israel, the Jewish nation of his biblical nation of Israel. That secular Jews living in Israel and don't want to go back to a theocracy. They feel that there's an obligation of justice, and they understand there is an obligation of justice. Not only for the nation of Israel, for all the nations of the world. And what is justice? Justice is today equality. All men are created equal. This was the major controversy that sprung up in the last generation in America during the Trump administration, when the people marched, Black Lives Matter. All people are created equal. That is, that they have equal rights, but they're not equal. Some people are more intelligent, some people are less intelligent, some people are physically stronger, some people are meek. A man is different than a woman. They have different emotionality. There are different races in the world. There's Orientals, there are Europeans, there's Muslims, Arabs, there's Jews. They're not all the same. But justice today, there is that all men are created equal. Was not the justice that existed at the time of the biblical nation of Israel. Jews prayed to return to the days of old. Whether it's practical or not is not an issue. It's part of Judaism. So it continues. Now, let's look at the number 10, because we know that there were 10 commandments, and we know that there were in the Torah there are 10 statements that created the world. How do we come to the number 10? It's 10 numbers. Now, there is two ways to count to the number 10. One way to count to the number 10 is to start with 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It ends at 9. The other way of counting to the number 10 starts with the number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The question is, we are told, and in the Torah, it's written in a great old sefer called Sefer Yetzirah, that there were 10 emanations, not 11 and not 9. It's 10. In other words, it can either be 10 that begins with 0, or it can be 10 that begins with 1. It's not 9 and it's not 11. So which is that number system? How do we begin to count? Which is the first counting and which is the second counting? Now there's a website on YouTube, very interesting and very well done. It's much more creative than my lectures, which have no visual stimulus. I'm very all alone here, and I can't really put anything on my screen except talk to you and speak. But this, if you look in YouTube, there is a put in the mystery of the number 9, and there is discussed that number 9 is the signature of God. How does it work? 9 is, if you take the Hebrew letters, the word for truth, Aleph, Mem, Tov, and add it up, it's 9. Aleph is 1, Mem is 4, Tov is 4. Now, if you multiply any number by 9, you get to a number. If you add up the two numbers together, it's equal to 9. Now, if you take a number and subtract from it, like 22, and subtract from it 4, you get 18, which is 8 is equal to 9. So in this website, it's proving that 9 was the conclusion of the count of God. It's the signature of God. So according to this understanding, creation starts from the number 0, not from the number 1. It's from the number 0. And then 1. And the 10th number is 9. What this is saying here is that God is connected to that beginning, which is in the middle between minus numbers, -1, -2, -3, -4, and +1, +2, +3, +4. In other words, God is the unity of the whole number system. He is in the middle. And the Torah begins, and the earth was empty and void. That the aspect of void in the beginning is 0. So, the creation of Adam was through the numbers 0. Each one of these numbers connects to emanation. The first emanation is called Keter, or crown. The second is called wisdom. The third is called understanding. You can find, put it into the Wikipedia Kabbalah, and you'll see what's called the tree of life. It's 10 emanations. And it starts with Keter, which connects to the number 0. So the number system, the 10 emanations, they created man. Now, if you take the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it's equal to 45. Adam, the name Adam in the Torah, Aleph, Dalet, Mem, is equal to 45. If you take each letter, it's equal to 9. So man, Adam in the Garden of Eden, was connected to the sphere of Keter, which is connected to 0, God's crown, which is also called the tree of life. Now, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, it's called a sin, but the Torah begins with the letter Beis, because there is a purpose in creation to populate the world. So after they ate from the tree of knowledge, and Adam and Eve now were a team, created, and they had to raise a family. God had to give a new law. And this new law is the law of God for man on this earth. And that law begins with the number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The number 1 is called wisdom. 2, understanding, until the number 10. These are also 10 emanations. But God is not part of these 10 emanations. God is separate from them. In the first counting, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, God is, that is Keter, the crown, a divine unity. In the second counting, God is separate, and there are 10 emanations and 10 commandments. Now, the first tablets that were given to Moses were tablets of the first counting, 0, 1, 2, 3, and the second tablets, which he broke them, because they were not suitable for people that want to build a dwelling place for God on earth. They were suitable for people that were perfect without sin. And there was the sin of the golden calf. So then God gave to Moses a second set of tablets, and Moses wrote them. Some say this, and the tablets became the religion of the Jewish people. And this was 10 commandments, 1, 2, 3, until 10, and God is supreme. So that's where we have 2 laws, and you should be blessed with it to know.